My husband, 30s, and I, 30s female, have a toddler son together, Max. Max is a sweet kid, but has difficulty in unfamiliar situations and can easily get overstimulated. A little while ago, my husband was on a work trip across the country while I was home with Max. I got a call one morning from his manager informing me that my husband had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. He couldn't tell me much but said that although he was stable, it didn't look good and that I should come as soon as I could. I freaked out. I booked a ticket for myself because it would be almost impossible to travel with Max, and I could barely afford the last-minute ticket. I called my mom, who lived a few hours away, and asked her to come watch Max while I was away. At this point, I needed someone to watch Max for the time it would take for my mom to arrive so I could make my flight. Looking back, I probably could have handled the logistics better than this, but I was hysterical and was just doing things as I thought of them. I called 3 friends. 1 didn't answer and 2 couldn't help. Luckily, we live close to my brother and sister-in-law, who has a daughter, nearly adult, Sarah, so we're very close to them. Finally, Sarah answered the door and said her parents were out. I explained the situation and asked if she would watch Max for a couple of hours until my mom came. I should note that Sarah babysits for a few local families and obviously charges them for her services. We've never asked Sarah to babysit before. She showed some concern for my husband, and when I asked her again, she said something along the lines of, "Well, you'll pay me, right? I usually charge X." I stared at her for a moment, not expecting that response. And then my friend who didn't answer called me back and said of course she'd watch Max. So I took Max and left without saying anything to my niece. I coordinated with my friend and my mom, and then I flew to see my husband. He ended up needing surgery, but he's making a full recovery. A few days after he could fly home, we had dinner with my brother and sister-in-law. We talked about the accident, and I mentioned that I'd asked Sarah to watch Max. I also noted that I was slightly upset that she brought up payment. My brother was surprised and said he would talk to her, as that's not an appropriate reaction. My sister-in-law interjected and said that she was proud of Sarah for advocating for herself. She and I argued, and she said that I was entitled to be surprised that Sarah asked for money. To be clear, if I was asking Sarah to babysit under normal circumstances, I would expect to pay her. It was unsettling that Sarah would bring up payment while, for all I knew, my husband was dying in a hospital on the other side of the country. I think it would have been more empathetic to bring up the topic of payment after I returned, plus confirmed that my husband was okay. My sister-in-law is still cold to me, and so is my niece. Am I the idiot for getting upset? Everyone's the idiot here. Sarah's a teenager. All she did was ask for payment for babysitting. Socially flawless? No. But again, teenager. People, including in emergencies, will pull crap like "you should have mentioned it beforehand" when someone asks to be paid after the fact. You are the idiot. You were upset and worried and didn't answer, then went about your business. Your responsibility was to find childcare for your child, even in an emergency, including paying for it when needed. I understand why you reacted that way in the heat of the moment, but to continue to bear a grudge for a teen negotiating the terms of a labor agreement is unreasonable. Not the idiot. My aunt refused to babysit my brother and I when our dad was possibly dying. This was 20 years ago. My mom's relationship with her never recovered. The niece needs to learn the time and place to advocate for herself. People say we don't owe others anything, but you do. You owe them empathy if you expect to be part of a family unit. Do you mean people behaving as if they were in a civilized society? Where do you help others just because it's the right thing to do? That is missing more and more. Yes, you advocate for yourself when someone mistreats you. However, being asked to help family in an emergency is not being mistreated. It's part of being in a functioning family unit. Alternate universe. OP's husband tragically passes away. Her niece. So, about my pay. I charge $25 an hour, and it took Grandma 3 hours to get here. I'm so sorry for your loss, but I can't afford to incur any losses. I've got school supplies to buy, you know? It was an emergency, a one-off thing, and the kid is family. For God's sake, your niece sadly lacks empathy and decency, as does your sister-in-law. I'll bet had she agreed, you'd have done something nice for her upon your return. Glad your husband will be okay. We're visiting my in-laws, and my sister-in-law told me about the books she's recently read and bought, as we both like reading. I've read some of the books, and I wasn't sure if she should be reading them as she's a teen, and some of them are pretty explicit and don't exactly have the healthiest romances. I don't think she should be reading 50 Shades either. I told my husband about the books, and he told his parents. My mother-in-law asked me to point out which ones I knew were too mature for her, and she's confiscated them. My sister-in-law is mad at me because she isn't going to get the books back, as my mother-in-law is planning to donate them, and she's no longer allowed to buy whatever books she wants. Am I the idiot? You are the idiot, but in a rather sad way. You could have used your fear of her developing an unhealthy image of romance as an opportunity to talk to her about that exact issue. If you wanted her to be safe, you should have used your relationship with her to educate her on why these books might portray an unhealthy image and advise her to read cautiously. You won't be able to control what she consumes ever, not with the internet and social media presence, but you threw away the opportunity to be her guide. Now you've taken away not only her books, but managed to teach her that she can't trust you instead. Not to mention, she's made those books more exciting after all. They've been forbidden to her, so now she'll want to read them more than ever. She's already read most of the books, so what good does it do to confiscate them now? OP, don't be surprised if she doesn't trust you again after this. I suggest you give her an apology and a Kindle. Oh Lord, she's a teen and reads. You all should jump with joy for that fact alone. And let me reiterate, she's a teen. She most likely has access to the internet. And excuse me for being blunt, if she wants to read or write smut fiction, she most certainly has her way of doing exactly that. In school, she might be reading Pride and Prejudice or To Kill a Mockingbird. Speaking of not having the healthiest romances, am I right? And despite all of this, she still enjoys reading. So let the kid read and give the books back or replace them. You need to apologize. What is wrong with y'all? I'm disgusted and angry. Welcome to never having a relationship with your sister-in-law ever again. And on top of that, you may have just caused a rift in your sister-in-law's relationship with her mother. Censorship is rough, and you've now taught a teen never to show her hobbies or interests to anyone for the rest of her life. Fiction doesn't equal reality. You're daft if you believe that. My brother passed away when his only child, female teen, was 1 year old. I know we should have been more involved in her life, but since we live in different cities, we didn't have much contact with her, especially because she's shy and doesn't like talking on the phone. However, a few months ago, her mom called and asked for our help since she was pregnant again, her 4th child, and said that it was a tough pregnancy and asked if we would help her and take our niece for a while, and we agreed. So she's been staying with me and my siblings and only goes home a few days each month. The problem is that while she misses her mom and siblings and wants to go home, she comes back upset every time she goes home. I asked her what it was, and it was always about how her mom treated her compared to her siblings. The baby's been born for a few weeks, and it's only gotten worse for my niece. So I suggested we keep our niece with us and made some excuses about how I don't want her to change schools, and told her mom it's probably better that she can focus on the new baby, and she agreed. But we had an agreement that she has to go home for Christmas. The problem is I don't want to send her home for Christmas. I know she'll miss her siblings, but I don't want her to end up upset again. And from what I've heard, her last Christmases weren't good either. So I made a suggestion she couldn't resist. I told her if she stayed for Christmas, we'll buy her a gaming system of her choice. She agreed to stay. Her mom has been calling and texting my siblings and calling us all idiots. So she wanted to go home. Her family wanted her to go home. And you bribed her to stay with you over Christmas for a gaming system? You are the idiot for bribing her, but her mom is in a bad environment. Have you tried to talk with her mom to remedy this? Ultimately, a teen is old enough to decide for herself, but it's incredibly immature of you to bribe her into staying away from her family. You're very vague about her mistreatment. For all we know, she's upset that there's a new baby at home, and the attention is less on her. That's normal and not mistreatment. If something unsafe is happening, go through the courts and get legal physical custody and guardianship. If you keep her without permission, her mom could call the cops on you. Don't bribe her to stay. Figure out what's going on and be an adult about how you handle it. Not the idiot. Having been in this situation myself, I only wanted to go home because I continuously held hope that seeing me after X amount of time would change the way I was treated. It didn't. Oh, there were hugs and smiles for the first few minutes, for show in my opinion, but as soon as the initial welcome home was over, I was the maid and the punching bag. Thank you for caring about this young lady, who I feel needs a strong support system, and you're doing all you can to support her. I wish her the best. I, 28 female, live with my friend and roommate, 30 female, in a flat that I own. We've been friends for almost a decade and have lived together a few times over the years. And when I bought my place, she asked to move in. It was a good deal. She gets to save by paying reduced rent, and I get some help with the mortgage. My friend is also from a super religious family, doesn't follow a lot of her family's beliefs now, premarital sex, drinking, etc. Her parents have accepted this, but ask that she keeps that part of her life hidden. The problem started when my friend found out that she was pregnant from a one-night stand and decided to keep the baby. Her parents disowned her, and she was heartbroken but not surprised. I told her that I was okay with her continuing to pay rent here and live with me for as long as she needed, and she gave birth to her baby boy, Alan, a few months ago. Around 2 months ago, her parents got back in touch and told her they'd like to see her. She has many younger siblings she helped raise, so she was super excited to go and see them, but they asked her not to take the baby, as they didn't want to be involved with him. So I offered to look after Alan while she saw her siblings, thinking it would be a one-time deal. So now she visits them almost every weekend, and sometimes during the week, often staying overnight while I look after Alan. I didn't mind too much to begin with. He's a very good baby, and I love hanging out with him. But Alan got sick last weekend just before she left to stay at her parents' house for the night, and after his temperature got super high, I took him to the hospital. It took her 6 hours to answer her phone, and she still didn't come to the hospital for another 3. Her parents live an hour away. I felt so powerless when Alan was sick because I'm not his mom or guardian, and the hospital had regulations about how much I could do for him and be with him. And although he's better now, I'm worried about looking after him again. She asked me to take care of him again this weekend, and I lost it. I explained that she had really put me in a horrible position while he was ill, and if she didn't give me some sort of guardianship or medical rights over him, I wouldn't be watching him again. She cried and said that I'm holding her hostage now by giving her an ultimatum that means she can't see her parents if she doesn't agree to provide me with rights to her son. And now I feel like I may be the idiot. Whoa, okay. First, not the idiot, not even close. She takes 6 hours to reply? I cannot, under any circumstances, imagine a scenario when I'm still breathing and it takes me that long to check my phone when one of my kids is with a babysitter. Second of all, if she doesn't see how dangerous this situation could have been for her son, that's a problem. It's great that she's trying to reconnect with her family, but she's a mother now, and she can't just leave her kid every weekend to hang out with people who want to pretend that he doesn't exist. That isn't healthy. That's neglect. Honestly, I think you're focusing on the entirely wrong thing here. Your friend found out her baby was in the hospital and didn't care. Does that sound healthy to you? Is that the kind of person you want to live with? You really need to ask yourself exactly how involved you want to be here, because your friend sounds like a horrible parent, and you taking care of this baby is wallpapering over that. Do you imagine yourself babysitting this kid every weekend, 6 years from now? 10 years? Until you're bled dry? She's willing to abandon her son for days. Her parents are horrible too. They're successfully erasing her kid from their perfect life. They don't even want to see her child and would rather she hide her baby's existence. She sucks for allowing herself to be manipulated by her family, and her family is majorly toxic. I'm surprised the hospital didn't call CPS when it became clear that mom wasn't responding after the baby had been in the hospital for hours. It's just a matter of time before CPS becomes aware of the neglect by the mom. I'm a mother of a teen daughter, Kelly. Her bio dad left when she was 4. It's complicated, but despite him being away, he still sent money or had his family help from time to time. I still struggled to raise her until I met my now husband, Christopher. Christopher is like a dad to Kelly. He's the only father figure she's had. However, I found out that she's reconnected with her bio dad through his family, his mother, which I wasn't happy about but didn't make a fuss about. Then she started mentioning him often, visiting him while canceling plans to hang out with us, etc. Her justification is that her dad is sick and might be terminal. I say it might be because she's a child and may not know what that means. So she sees him at his friend's house where he's staying now. Christopher and I were planning her birthday party at our house. Kelly told me she'd like to have her bio dad come over to celebrate since he may not be able to be around next year. Christopher said no immediately. He said he wouldn't let that man come into his house, which made Kelly cry, saying that we were robbing her of her last chance to make memories with her dad after finally finding him again. I told her that I didn't feel comfortable having him come to the house and be in the same room as him. Her stepsister said that Christopher and I were overreacting and that Kelly wanted her dad to participate in her birthday so badly. So Christopher left the house, and I snapped at Kelly and threatened to cancel the whole thing. Later, when we calmed down, I suggested she goes to celebrate with him, but she said her friends and their parents wouldn't be able to attend. She also said he couldn't throw her the party since he was sick. We had another argument, and she started ignoring Christopher and me while staying in her room. She's saying she won't forgive me if I let her dad miss what could be her last birthday with him. Am I being unreasonable, or is she? You are the idiot. This isn't about you. Your daughter's reconnected with her dad and wants him in her life for as long as he's alive, which is not very long at all. I understand you have resentment against him, but he, by your account, helped with money throughout your daughter's life. If this is the hill you want to die on, be prepared for your relationship with your daughter to take a massive dive. Also, she's not a toddler, and she does know what terminal means. Would you still feel the same way if he weren't terminal, but just the guy who left this kid, going years without contact and providing the bare minimum, if that, financial support? Illness doesn't change the core of a person. The only difference is it pushes people to try to get forgiveness before death and some hope of getting absolution for their transgressions. Basically, it's all well and good he wants to reconnect on the emotional side, but what about the rest of it? Not the idiot, OP. You're well within your rights to feel uncomfortable and resentful around him and not want him in your home. But this is a young adult, not a child. Also, she has every right to reconnect with her dad, and you, OP, have zero right to be upset about it. I say this because as it comes across, this is the thing you have a problem with. Not so much the birthday, but the reconnecting in general. OP, you don't have to like the guy. Heck, you don't even have to speak with him. But it would behoove you to be the bigger person here.